Welcome back to the Powered by Ground podcast. I am Kevin Winkle and joined today by David Kornienko, founder and CEO, and the head dog in charge here with Powered by Ground. David, good to see you again today.
Yeah, Kevin, likewise. Thank you.
So our goal here every week or every time we come together with this podcast is to bring information strictly to the people in the industry that are brokers, specifically builders, developers, investors, and how we can all work together inside of this space. There's a big, huge piece of education missing as far as real estate agents are concerned, especially I know this is true for myself, that there's just not enough information about how to effectively work in the new construction space. And right now in 2025, this is one of the biggest sectors of the industry. New construction is seeing more growth, and we're seeing more building in a lot of areas than we've seen historically, especially right where we're at. We're in one of the fastest growing areas in Washington state at the moment. And so we're really trying to document this process. And David's got all that information. So, David, again, thanks for sitting in with me today. Got a whole bunch of questions for you. First off, like, really, what is your whole goal behind this, behind Powered by Ground? What's driving it? What's the purpose?
So when you look at just, the real estate sector, builders, developers, investors, brokers, all of that, we just had a good meeting with a title rep here locally, and we were holding the same discussion. What we found is, the broker network is really the biggest network pool of talent also that is pulled from the broker world. And I mean, I have a lot of project managers who were brokers. I have a lot of title reps who were real estate brokers one time. I have met, a lot of inside salespeople, outside salespeople. So, the broker network is a very strong and powerful contributor to the new home space. And I think it's been always kind of downplayed or just kind of quiet about it. But when you really unravel it, the top producing brokers, I just had a meeting with the title rep. We talked about, Boise, Idaho, and he said, the greatest top producing brokers, in Boise, Idaho, all came out of, a brokerage that, has a huge space in new home sales. And I go, well, yeah, of course, because they learn scripts, but they also learn product. And those brokers who learn scripts and product, excel so much further in this industry than those who just learn scripts and know how to answer objections and all of that. So there is a huge contribution towards your broker business if you understand scripts and sales, but then you understand product and you understand how homes are built, how things are going to be, because that's the product you're eventually selling to your clients.
That is really kind of remarkable to hear that they're coming out of a team that really had roots in new construction. And that makes a lot of sense to me. And I know that Boise, Idaho is experiencing a ton of growth. Everyone who wants to
Mm-hmm.
go to the nearest God's country to leave Portland and Seattle area, they all head straight to Boise. And that's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of what's going on. So they're having a lot of inbound growth, people coming into the area. It's not necessarily just from what's going on right there.
Mm-hmm.
So really interesting to hear that. And I'm sure a lot of folks out there listening right now are kind of going, wait, like the biggest agents are coming out of new construction. What's going on? There's not even a conversation about this, like at all, at all. Your first couple years in real estate, I know was my experience. No one even talked about it, like not in the least bit. So it was always seen as something else, something separate, but not necessarily something that's attainable. And it kind of seems like, well, maybe it is. Maybe that knowledge is
Mm-hmm.
just kind of missing. So that's what you're bringing to the table here, and that is really
Yeah.
cool.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, Kevin, that is, I mean, first, the more market share, and then the second, I mean, we all see, something being built, as we drive in. But I guess most brokers' curiosity just does not kick in regarding, oh, how does this come to be, But we talked about this, for the brokers that are coming out of that space, that yeah, they get an opportunity to learn product and learn everything that has to do with new homes, but not only
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
but in the future, right? So, and we've
Right.
talked to you about this, like, when zoning changes and stuff change, these brokers have first insight of what is going to come down the pipeline and resale, and they're just a lot better equipped. You know, when I come in into a community that was built by, say, one of the local builders, like I got a lot of stuff to talk with the client, right? It's not just like, oh, how can I sell your home? It's like, hey, this community was built out, in the 2020. I mean, I remember this builder. I remember this. I remember that. Like you're starting to drop a lot of more things into conversation than just like, oh, it's your house and the MLS, because it
Right.
definitely goes always beyond that, right? It's like, where's your community, your location, the builder? Was it a cool parade home, in the 2000s and 20s? I mean, there's just different venues of conversations that you have once you understand the new home space.
True. And, I know that my clients have had a lot of those questions, and being in and around it myself, I've been able to answer them a lot more. They'll ask my opinion to different builders, which, I'm not necessarily supposed to give all the way, but if they give me a list of a few, I can tell them which one I think does a better
Mm-hmm.
quality job or
Mm-hmm.
is closer to certain parts of town, or who's building in what price range. I mean, that information, um, I've had to go out there and dig in and find it myself, and a lot through working with you and working with these builders directly and starting to get tapped in. And again, like that just wasn't even there. I didn't even know about it. So without having learned about all this, I can't really facilitate the needs of my clients in order to get them the best end result if I don't even know what's going on out there. I'm kind of in competition with myself.
And
And
again, our community is slowly growing, right? Like the
right,
audience of brokers that are listening to Powered by Crown, listening to us on weekly basis, like they're slowly hearing us. The builders in our area are hearing us, and so forth. But yeah, I mean, this has to become second nature conversation among the broker world. Like there's a title
um,
company that, and they do education inside of builder offices, and bring in brokers. And what's
right,
interesting is they brought in a pool of brokers, and within a couple of months, that pool of brokers sold out those homes inside of those communities. So it's like it's a given. Once brokers see what new homes is all about, they have such a greater opportunity, in selling those homes to their buyer pool or to their friends and their network and everybody that they're working with.
yeah. Yeah, fully. And that's something that we got to learn a little bit more about. So we'll dig a little bit more in this podcast into like the different types of clients that we can service in this, but just right off the top, for anybody who just doesn't know where to start, what's the best thing that they can do to start learning about this? What can they
So
do different?
a lot of brokers, again, yes, there's limited information on new home sales, and we're definitely a resource for a lot of the brokers out there, and definitely title companies and other lenders in your network, in your community, that in your market centers that are working in this new space. So you should slowly start to surround yourself with people who are in the new home space and start learning or gaining information, from them. And I always say become a relay of information between, the information you're gathering in the community and your clients. So it's really important to start gathering this information. And when you gather information, this information starts to make sense for you. So it's like anything that you learn, right? First of all,
Right.
you're kind of naive and you're like, how does this all work? But the longer you're surrounding yourself with this information, you can slowly start making sense. So start to gather information about new home sales. Listen to our podcast, listen maybe to other podcasts, other brokers, start listening to builders, developers, inside salespeople, all these tiers we're going to talk about today. But start to slowly work your way into understanding these conversations that are taking place in the new home space.
Yeah, I can testify to that. That was exactly the path that led me kind of to where I'm at now. Even with, I had a background in construction, but still pretty limited, not to the extent
Mm-hmm.
of what I've got to know now to be able to
Mm-hmm.
service my clients. So that was totally it. Listening to podcasts, showing up to the Powered by Ground classes every Friday, as they were in person. Now,
Mm-hmm.
thank goodness, they're all on the web, and I can go back and see him because that seemed to be the time my clients always wanted to meet. Also, so it's all there, the information's there, but then that big piece of going and touring just as an agent, walking into
Mhm,
the sales offices and just letting them know, hey, I'm an agent and school me up here. Like, tell me, what are your
mhm,
main selling points? What's good about you guys? Who are your client types? That really helped to educate me a lot more about, all right, well, who's the type of people I should bring here? What
mhm.
is it that they have to offer? What sets this one apart from that one? And that was,
Absolutely.
yeah, totally. So, killer advice there. And I just charge anybody who's listening right now that hasn't done it, take a couple times this week and go stop by a builder's office for a half hour or for an
Mhm,
hour.
mhm.
Take an afternoon and go check out 3 or 4 of them because your
Correct.
clients are going to do it with or without you.
Mhm,
So if you start that conversation and lead with it, then you can say, yeah, you should go check out Pack Life if you get a day off, or you should
mhm,
go check out Cascade West, or you should go check out, any of the rest of them, that you
mhm,
think might be a good fit for these folks. Some
mhm,
builders, they're doing just step up homes. There's some builders that are doing some first time home buyer or more affordable. There's some builders that only
mhm,
do townhouses. There's some builders that only do single level for the most part.
mhm.
That you just got to get like really used to them. So as a broker, I can say that getting that knowledge, it has been really helpful with my existing clients. But that doesn't even get into what I've heard you call the 4 tiers of clients that we can serve inside
Correct.
of new construction, and that's
Mhm,
not just our buyers and sellers. So we'll kind of get into those a little bit here, and these 4 tiers are brokers, builders, developers, and investors. So David, why don't you
mhm.
walk me through this a little bit, as far as from the point of new construction and the first tier, that brokers, inside outside
Yes.
salespeople. How do we start to work with them?
So as brokers, we always have to understand that we're focusing on the transaction. Where are
Mm,
transactions made?
mm.
That's where, brokering a deal exists. And if we don't put our emphasis on, cultivating that transaction, then we don't know how to really bridge, into making that deal happen. And in new home space, yes, you're working up all these tiers. So you will be talking to other brokers, you're going to be talking to builders, you're going to be talking to developers and investors. And among all of these, our goal is to cultivate transactions. So how does it work with brokers? Our first kind of stepping stone. So you have to learn to talk to inside salespeople, outside sales brokers. Inside sales brokers are those who represent exclusively the builder, or working exclusively with the developer, but they are always compensating outside brokers. And this is a phenomenal way to, learn to work within the broker community. You have to be nice to people. Like,
Yeah.
well, one thing I've learned, like a lot of brokers, they're just kind of like they rough in on each other. No, you got to be nice to other brokers because
Mm,
they're in this, as much as you're in this on trying to make a transaction work. So you got to be nice to other brokers. Plus, the space is so little. Like, I mean, we're going to step on each other's toes. I mean, we're competing, maybe sometimes for the same client. So we got to be nice while we're trying to be competitive, right? But usually a
right.
lot of people's competitive comes off very rough. So our first tier is learning really to work with other brokers. So when you enter that sales office, approach that inside. And Kevin, you and I, we've walked into, a bunch of inside salespeople, and it's nice when they're nice and you're nice, right? You can
Totally.
accomplish so much in this conversation. You
Yeah.
can learn so much. You're not afraid to refer, a buyer, and a lot of brokers are scared to refer a buyer to an inside sales because they got nothing with that inside salesperson, right? So you got to build that relationship, knowing that if Pack Life's bringing a couple hundred homes to the market, you better be friends with that inside salespeople because that's how you're going to cultivate a transaction. You know,
Right.
you bring them a buyer or two or three. You need them to. There has to be an open communication both ways. Otherwise, and I know like I've been able to help a lot of brokers, save
Mhm, mhm.
transactions because I had ins with the inside salesperson. I'll call them. I was like, hey, what happened on the walkthrough? Why are these buyers not happy? What can we do? Can we do this or this? And so forth. And just because I
Right.
had relationship with those inside salespeople, it took me to a whole nother level of a transaction that took us to a transaction that closed. And this is where I think we have to start making a greater emphasis on when we are out there working with brokers. Kevin, like you and I, we have great partnerships on many different levels. You run
Sure.
your own business, I run my own business, but like, the way we've been able to pour into each other's businesses is going to take us all a lot further down, our career paths.
The 1,000% correct. I've seen that be true in my career, definitely from our
Mm-hmm.
interactions, and also in all sorts of areas in life from the same thing. Okay, I think I can identify something that you've just said here that is something everyone needs to hear. In that,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this new construction space, this is about collaboration over competition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, healthy
Yes.
competition is one thing, but actually, it takes like a village to build a house in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So the transaction sale of it shouldn't be any different, really. And if we want to participate in this arena, then we have to understand that there's um, sort of a mindset that it takes in order to actually build is coming together or assembling pieces to create something. The transaction is no different, and so those
Mm-hmm.
relationships with the individuals and how you interact and how you come off with them is going to completely alter that the outcome for everybody involved. And so really coming from that place of contribution, how can I help, what can we do to work this together to make it a win for everybody, that really is crucial in all the rest of your resale business and really just in life. In my personal not so humble opinion, I'll say
Mm-hmm.
absolutely lead with contribution, lead with value. And that's where things change. That's how my life changed for sure, is once I got that
Mm-hmm.
switched around and it wasn't me against the world, it was me for the world. And then suddenly everything
Mm-hmm.
was a whole different kind of thing. So just seeing that and kind of changing that little shift where brokers,
Mm-hmm.
we're like famous on the TV and in movies for being like competitive and going after each other, but that actually doesn't work. It doesn't work out. It doesn't work out for the clients. It ends up being like a contentious transaction and it doesn't go anywhere. And when you've got that kind of stuff going on, it's really hard to even enter into the new construction space and just have that competition, because that's not what this is about over here.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So and then that rolls into like working with builders, and
Right.
a
Right.
lot of brokers are scared to work with builders, thinking like they're not humans or something. But builders, they're just under a lot of pressure all the time, because I consider building like manufacturing, and if you go into a
Mm,
manufacturing place, there's a lot of things going on, like from stress testing to putting things together to timelines to all of this. So like builders, they go through their own stress, but they really need two needs from brokers. And this is where I think we have to understand: first, they want lots, and second, they want their house sold. So this
right.
is where brokers really have to come in and serve them in their needs. And that's what we really are all about, is serving the needs of our clients. Well, if a builder is your client, or you have a buyer who wants to buy, a builder's home, you have to understand, like, a builder's always under a lot of pressure on trying to put a home together, because it's like a manufacturing process, and they're trying to stay within the guidelines of the state, the local jurisdiction, on putting this thing together. And there's a lot of moving parts that take place, on placing a home together and making it functional and making it operable for the client. So I'd say the builders,
Right.
whether they're building SFRs, whether they're building, townhomes and cottages or whatever the product is that they're building into the market, they're always under a lot of stress on going vertical on all of the work that needs to be done. So it's just, if you can cultivate this mindset as a broker: hey, this is what the builder's going through, this is what my client. And again, it's
Mhm.
all about cultivation of the transaction. So you have to understand both sides of the people on the transactions to slowly cultivate yourself into that space and help facilitate the deal. Otherwise, there is no value for a broker, Kevin. Like, and that's
Right.
where I think brokers have to understand, like, our value prop is we understand both sides, we understand how to help both sides come to middle grounds, and talk to the client and slowly explain to them where the builder's coming from and so forth. So yeah, builders are definitely um, an aspect, whether it's a national builder or a local builder. I mean, they're going through the same process of trying to put a house together, and manufacturing it into existence. So that's kind of the mindset I would like, I think brokers to hold when they're trying to work with builders.
Right. And I think that the thing that I was really surprised to find out about builders and how to work with them is that they actively want and need brokers to work with them.
Yes.
They just don't have really a means to get in contact with us and talk about it. So, because they're busy doing their job, they're building, they're focused on what it
Yeah.
is they're doing. So,
Exactly.
they actually need us to
Hmm.
seek them out and get in contact
Correct.
and ask them what it is that they need. And each of them is different.
Hmm.
Some of them need at least 3 acres in a place where, they are close to the freeway. Other ones don't mind 20 acres as long as it's on a main, kind of close to a
Hmm.
main thoroughfare
Hmm.
that can get to the freeway. Some of them need just 1 or 2 lots here and there.
Hmm.
They all have a different need, and none of them have time to
Correct.
do it because they're a builder. They're not a broker. So
Hmm.
they might have a broker that they're working with on each place, but if you bring them new dirt, they probably likely are going to not only use you to buy that dirt, but then they'll also use you to list that for sale when
Absolutely.
it's time. And then once you're the one listing it for sale and they got people walking in their front door into the builder's office without
Hmm.
their agent, those people have homes that need to be sold in order to buy the builder house. So there's so many more transactions that can open up if we learn how to work with them and reach out. And it can
Correct.
take a long time before that happens. That could be, years for that whole process
Hmm.
to occur, but it's definitely business that's out there and it grows big and fast. You get a good relationship with the builder and you can just take off. I mean, really, or become one yourself like you, David. you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, I've seen a lot of brokers start as brokers, learn the game, and work their way up, whether they become an investor or a developer or a builder. So again, there's a lot of talent inside of the broker community, and I would not be amazed whether I poke any market, nationwide, that out of the broker community came out great investors, out of the broker world came out, great builders and developers. So yeah, that's part of Powered by Ground too, is cultivating this talent so people can move, in the space and understand maybe, hey, I'm a broker, but maybe I'm not supposed to do resale. Maybe, land development is my gig and this is what I want to do. And a lot of people do transition to these spaces and it's phenomenal. And I think
yeah.
there's a lot more talent that needs to be added to this space.
There needs to be a lot more, and I think one of the biggest gaps and the biggest holes in people's understanding is development. A lot of people just think, okay, I got a piece of dirt, I should just be able to split it in half, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
understand that development is a huge process, massive, so
Mm-hmm.
many steps between a
Mm-hmm.
piece of dirt and the day the city says you can put a shovel in the ground. There's a ton
Mm-hmm.
of stuff in there, and there's not a lot, there's mostly a few people that are working in that space in the city. Some people will do a single one-off project, but there aren't a ton of developers out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be a
Mm-hmm.
small handful. So if someone wanted to from the broker world wanted to start working with developers, what does that look like? How do we start serving those clients?
Again, developers are anything that works with horizontal, right? So they're taking buying land, turn it into 4 lots or 400 lots. So all these developers are seeking brokers who would bring them land opportunity, and that's called land acquisition. And there's a handful of brokers who love to be participants in those transactions. There's a couple of gal brokers here locally. They work with land attorneys. They love working with landowners, and they love, selling the land and the dirt over to the developers. So there's absolutely, there's one thing I think brokers need to understand is the time. It takes a lot longer than just a traditional transaction, and there's other things that have to be done while you're cultivating, into that space. So there's definitely a
Hmm.
huge gap between how brokers see the transactions and then how the transactions truly take place. So this is very important that brokers actually interview developers and ask them questions. Hey, so how long does it take to develop? How long are you going to be in this project? How's the feasibility? So at least, your first two, 3 deals, you're learning from the developer on what they want, to contribute towards feasibility study and all of this. But once you understand that, guess what? There's
Mhm.
enough deal flow, everywhere. So transactions, again, there's transactions to be made all the way up to the tier, between brokers, between builders, between developers, and like our last tier is between investors.
Right.
Investors like capital flow, period. So they have to invest money into the market, so their capital comes in from returns. So they love real estate and they like seeing their money be put to real estate. So what are they seeking? They're seeking transactions where traditional financing is not an option, but capital flow is an option, and they're more than happy to invest in. These investor groups are everywhere. There's national ones, and then there's local, and then there's your banks. But the easiest way to slowly to start bridging into that is talking to your banking develop business banker, commercial business banker. So wherever you bank at, ask them for a commercial rep and start talking to that commercial banker, because that's what
Mm.
commercial bankers do. They work with a lot of people with a lot of money, and how they deploy it differently in the market. And this is something you have to start. So that's a service your bank actually does to you,
Mm.
right? So if you are
Mm.
banking with a
Okay.
bank, they're commercial, everybody is trying to service you as their customer. So this is a phenomenal way for you as a broker to get into the investor world and into the banking world by having them service you as a client and ask them a lot of questions. That's how I did. Kick in your curiosity. Hey, how does this, how does that, how do people invest with your bank, and so forth. And slowly you get a lot of free training, which is basically going back to our first conversations. You need a lot of training, by other people and professional, and find those who are, willing to teach you. There's a lot of people who in the industry took the time to teach me of things that I do not know, and then there's plenty of other people who are willing to teach you, just like why we're doing Powered by Ground, because we feel like in every guest speaker that we're bringing from the lending, from the builder, from the, our goal is to, cross train a lot of information so that brokers can really pick this up and start adapting this into their business.
That's surprising how many people will be absolutely willing to share information with you when you ask them.
Yes.
Really, it's not difficult. You could call down to the bank and literally say, "Hey, my name's
Mm-hmm.
Kevin. I am a real estate
Mm-hmm.
broker here in the area, and I would need to speak with your commercial banking department, and I want to get a little more information about how you guys operate and how we can work together." And they will totally
Yes.
set up an appointment. They got the coffee and cookies. They'll bring it right in, and people will just share that information. And we don't know what we don't know, but also you're not going to find out if you don't ask. Sometimes
Correct.
the information is a lot more available than we even realize that it is, and there might not be anyone trying to train us or say this is exactly what you got to do and figure out, but that come from a place of curiosity is totally
Mm-hmm.
the best thing that you can do. You're not in that scenario, we wouldn't be going into the bank to try and like dupe them into giving us some money for something that we're trying to do. Actually, it's just about the education piece. And what I was really surprised to find out about in the commercial space is how willing people are to train you and to help you get figured out how to get
Mm-hmm.
moving. I always thought, a lot of people think about doing a flip on a home or
Mm-hmm.
doing some renovations, and they completely forget about the fact that they have a local bank, like not the
Mm-hmm.
big box banks, not the chains, but the locals, the local
Credit unions.
banks.
Yes.
They totally want to do that. They want to help
Mm-hmm.
property values go up. It's good for the bank. It's good for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know that because we haven't gone in and talked to them yet about how to do it and how to make it work. They'll halfway teach you how to put together the business plan for it right there. They might even do it for you while you're there
No, and I've
working.
had a lot of, commercial bankers give me a lot of good references, either for capital or financing or anything, because that's who they talk to all day long, is a bunch of investors and how to service. So the bank service, just like title companies and lenders service, a lot of the buyers and the sellers. I'd say the banks are your greatest asset in servicing investors and a good starting point to, break into any market on that network. So yes, all investors put their money into banks, and the commercial bankers know about these investors and service these investors so that these investors would bank more with that local credit union or bank, and so forth. So you'll definitely learn a lot from your local commercial banking, wherever you bank at.
No kidding. Yeah. And they've even been known to put some deals together here and there. So it's
Yes,
definitely
there you go.
something that we should go check out just in case there might be a deal that we can scratch to the surface
Mm-hmm.
by turning
Mm-hmm.
over rocks. And as simple as that. And it's going to be the same thing with the developers. It's going to be the same thing with the builders. There's always somebody there who wants to tell you how you can work with them because they
Mm-hmm.
want to work with more people. All of us do.
Correct.
Surprise, surprise.
Correct.
We all do. We want to work with more people.
Yes.
And these four tiers specifically, I can say none of these are discussed in early real estate education. No one talks about any of these. They talk about a whole other sector of who you can work with. But here, building these relationships with the brokers, building them with the builders, building them with the developers, and with the investors. And let's throw in a fifth tier is also the commercial banks
Mm-hmm.
because you kind of become their client, but they sort of become yours at the same time because you're helping to service each other's businesses. So these, it's not talked about. If you've listened in and listened through the whole podcast, thank you very much for tuning in with us today. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, a like, a share, a comment. If you have questions, you can leave them in the comments below this video or feel free to reach out. The link is in the bio. Once again, I'm Kevin Winkle, and this is David Kornienko with Powered by Ground. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll catch y'all in the next one.
See ya. Thank you.